I really like William Blake talks about how imagination is not just like a state, but it's the human existence in itself. I also like Terence McKenna's idea that the imagination is like our lens to look into the morphogenetic field of the psyche. Maybe there isn't really any difference, actually. Maybe whatever we can imagine, or whatever is imagined through us, is a possible condition that we can create. So maybe our future is to unleash the imagination to its full potential. Well, the idea of the morphogenetic fields from Rupert Sheldrake. Sheldrake had the incredibly, I think, brilliant insight that the idea that nature that there are laws of nature that are fixed and immutable is actually in itself only an idea of the human mind that developed in the evolution and the history of science, when the science kind of began to reach its zenith in the 17th century. The scientists were all Christians who believed in an immutable God who was omniscient, and a kind of court of angels that was similar to kind of like a legal court. So somehow this idea of fixed laws of nature became this kind of metaphysical doctrine that was then kind of transcribed to the natural world. Sheldrake notes that there probably aren't fixed and immutable laws of nature. That the laws of nature might be more like habits or patterns that become more coherent over time. So, for instance, crystals form when a certain group of molecules are together, and that creates like a morphogenetic field or likelihood that crystals will form given that particular combination of molecules. So then that happens more and more, and so then it becomes to seem like a law of nature because it seems to happen every time, but actually it's still just a pattern, and the pattern could evolve or change. We probably time travel a little bit every night when we sleep and dream. Definitely certain psychedelic experiences feel like time travel, or they seem like sometimes like disjunctive experiences where you kind of shift timelines. Maybe there's all sorts of different timelines that branch into different futures, and when you go through some visionary state or psychedelic experience, you can branch off and jump from one timeline to another. Then I also really like this idea that different mystics and visionaries and channels talk about that actually there really isn't a future or a past. It's all happening at one moment. So anything that we change in our present reality is also changing both the past and the future. Well, teleportation would be the idea that we could move, without having to physically move through space. We could just leap from one spot to another spot. I think they've actually started to develop a quantum teleportation, at least on a very micro scale. We don't know if it's something that will ultimately be available for us to do, but I don't see why it wouldn't be. I think we're evolving very rapidly as a species in terms of our consciousness. And some of this is being, kind of augmented or accelerated by social media, social technology, mass media. I think it becomes harder and harder for us to make the same mistakes. It might have seemed great 30 years ago to act like Sid Vicious and become a rock star and then destroy yourself with all sorts of horrible drugs. But now we see what that leads to. And just in subtler and subtler levels, people are in such tight feedback loops where their gestures, thoughts, actions are amplified and shown back to them, that it becomes harder and harder to make the same stupid errors and mistakes. So it forces people to make subtler errors and subtler mistakes. So I'm still very inspired by Buckminster Fuller and his whole vision of that the choice for humanity is in utopia or oblivion, and there's really not very much in between. And I'm very, very inspired by Oscar Wilde's essay about the soul of man under socialism, where he sees the artist as the example of human individuality given its full expression, and that the future of humanity lies in everybody having that opportunity to develop their individuality to the fullest. And the way to do that is to liberate people from, kind of unnecessary economic insecurity by giving everybody kind of a similar, stable foundation, to live. And I completely agree with him, and think that somehow in the next decades we're going to make a transition in that direction.